This year, quietly, without a single one of us being asked, something changed about who owns your face. Not your bank details, not your address, your face, the one thing about you that you cannot change, cannot leave at home, and cannot switch off. In 2026, it quietly became three things at once: a key, a password, and a search term in a police database. And almost nobody sat you down and told you. I want to show you exactly what changed, because when you put the three pieces side by side, it is genuinely one of the most significant shifts in the relationship between an ordinary British citizen and the state that has happened in decades. And it happened in stages, quietly, across this year, so that no single headline ever made you sit up. Here's the shape of it. Your driving license moved onto your phone, and your face became the key that unlocks it. The photograph the DVLA holds of nearly every driver in the country moved a step closer to being searchable by police facial recognition. And the cameras that scan faces in the street against a secret watch list stopped being a rare trial and started rolling out across the country. And stay with me right to the end, because the third thing is the one that matters most, and it's the one almost nobody knows about. For years there was a court case, a real binding one, that stood between you and this technology. This year, quietly, in a courtroom, that protection fell. I'll tell you exactly what happened, and far more importantly, I'll tell you what rights you still have when one of these cameras is pointed at your face, because you have more than the police would like you to think. I'm Oliver Bennett. For 15 years, I defended people in police stations and courtrooms across England and Wales, and if there is one thing that job teaches you, it is that powers which arrive quietly, framed as convenience, are the ones you most need to understand before you need them. This isn't legal advice, and it isn't a conspiracy theory. Everything I'm going to tell you is a matter of public record, and I'll be straight with you about what's already happened and what's only been proposed. But by the end, you'll understand exactly what's changed and what you can actually do about it. Let me take the three changes in order, because the order is how the trap was built. The first change is the one that looks the friendliest, and it arrived from February of 2026. Your driving license went digital. Through the government's One Login app, your full driving entitlements now live on your phone. And on the face of it, that's convenience. No more digging a bit of pink card out of a drawer. But look at how you unlock it. To open your digital license, you use facial recognition, or a fingerprint, or a PIN. Which means the government has now, very gently, trained an entire nation to accept that your face is your credential. That your face is the thing you present to prove who you are. Now, I want to be completely fair here, because being fair is the whole point of this channel. Right now, this is optional. Nobody is being forced onto the app. Your physical photocard license remains valid until at least 2030, and if you never download a thing, you are breaking no law and losing no right. If you take one practical thing from this section, it's that keep your physical license. Do not surrender it for the app just because the app is shiny. You lose nothing by keeping the card, and you keep a version of yourself that doesn't require your face to switch on. But hold that idea, your face as your credential, because it matters enormously for the second change. The second change is quieter, and it's the one that turns your face from a key into a search term. And this is the one I have to be most careful and most honest with you about, because the line between what has happened and what has been proposed is exactly where people get frightened by the wrong thing. Here's what's real. The DVLA holds a photograph of nearly every driver in this country, tens of millions of faces, sitting in one government database. And this year, in Parliament, there was an attempt to put a firm legal block in the way of the police being able to run facial recognition searches against that DVLA driver database. That block, it was an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill, was voted down in the House of Lords. Let me say very plainly what that does and does not mean, because I will not overstate it to you. It does not mean police are, today, running your driving license photo through a facial recognition scanner every time you walk down the street. What it means is that the door which campaigners tried to lock, the door between your driver photo and police facial recognition, was deliberately left unlocked. The principle that the largest photo database of law-abiding citizens in the country could be turned into a police search tool was not ruled out. It was left open, subject to a legal framework the government is still writing. And you need to sit with what that database actually is, because it's the thing that makes this different from a camera on a wall. You did not commit any offence to be in it. You are in it because you drive a car. It is a database of the innocent, the entire law-abiding driving population of Britain, and the question that was quietly left open this year is whether the innocent can be searched, by face, without ever being suspected of anything. That brings me to the third change, and this is the one out on the street, the one you can actually walk past. Live facial recognition, the cameras that scan the faces of everyone who passes and check them, in real time, against a watch list, stopped being an occasional trial. Over the past year, the Metropolitan Police doubled how often it deploys the technology across London. And the plan goes much further than London. The intention is to expand from around 10 facial recognition vans to roughly 50 rolled out across the country. It has been described, not by campaigners but in the coverage of the plans themselves, as the biggest overhaul in policing in nearly 200 years. So picture what that actually means on an ordinary afternoon. You walk into town to pick up a prescription. Parked up near the high street is an unremarkable van. As you walk past it, without any notice you'd recognise, without being stopped, without being suspected of anything at all, a camera captures your face, converts it into a biometric map, and checks it against a list of faces you are not allowed to see, compiled for reasons you are not told. If you're not on the list, they'll tell you the data is deleted. If the system thinks you're a match, and these systems have wrongly flagged innocent people before, you may find yourself stopped, on the street, having to prove you are not someone else. That is a genuinely new thing in British life. For centuries, the deal in this country was roughly that the police needed a reason to take an interest in you specifically. Facial recognition inverts that. It takes an interest in everyone, continuously, and works backwards. And it arrived not through one dramatic law that we all argued about, but through 3 quiet steps in a single year. And I want you to understand how the scan itself actually works, because the detail is where the discomfort lives. When that camera captures your face, it does not just take a photograph, it measures you. It maps the geometry of your face, the distances between your features, into a string of numbers, a biometric template that is as unique to you as a fingerprint. And in the fraction of a second it takes you to walk past the van, that template is compared against every face on the watch list. You are, in that instant, treated as a suspect in a lineup you didn't know you were standing in, and then, if you don't match, released from it without ever knowing it happened. Millions of times a day, across a city, the innocent are put into the lineup and taken out again, silently. And these systems are not infallible, which is the part that turns an abstract worry into a real one. There has already been a case in this country of a man stopped by police because the technology decided he was a wanted man, and he wasn't. Imagine it. You're going about your day, and suddenly officers are approaching you because a computer looked at your face and got it wrong, and now you are the one who has to prove your own innocence on a pavement in front of a crowd for a crime you've never heard of. The burden quietly flips, the machine accuses, and you defend. That is exactly the kind of thing the law is supposed to guard against, and it's exactly the guard that slipped this year. Now here's the part I told you to stay for, and it's the one that changes how you should feel about all of this. For years there was a case that stood in the way. Its name is Bridges against South Wales Police. Back in 2020, the Court of Appeal looked at the police use of live facial recognition and ruled that it was unlawful. It held that the way it was being used breached the right to a private life under Article 8 of the Human Rights Convention, that it breached data protection law, and that the force hadn't properly met its equality duties because there was too much unchecked discretion about who ended up on a watch list and where the cameras were pointed. For years, that judgment was the thing campaigners pointed to. It was the wall. This year, that wall came down. In April of 2026, the High Court considered a fresh challenge to the Metropolitan Police's use of live facial recognition, And this time, the court ruled that the way the Met was now using it was lawful, in accordance with the law. The framework had been tidied up just enough, the policies rewritten just enough, that the technology which had once been declared unlawful was now given the court's blessing. And that is the real headline of this whole video, the thing that isn't a headline anywhere else. The single biggest legal protection that ordinary people had against being scanned in the street was quietly removed this year, in a courtroom, and replaced with a green light. That is why all three of those changes matter at once. The convenience, the database, and the cameras all arrived in the same year that the main legal break came off. Now, before I give you the last two things and the practical steps, this is exactly the reason I put the Know Your Rights handbook together. Everything I do on this channel is one situation at a time, and that's useful. But what people actually need is the whole map. What the police can and can't do in the street, at your door, at the roadside, and now in front of a camera, with the exact words and the actual legal footing for each one. It's written in plain English, for a person, not a lawyer, and it's the same guidance I'd give my own family. I'm not going to give you a hard sell. The link's in the description if you want it, and everything you need to take the first step is right here in this video. So let me do the thing this channel exists to do, and tell you what rights you actually still have, because you have real ones, and the gap between what you're entitled to and what people meekly go along with is enormous. The first, and the most important, is this. You are not obliged to identify yourself to a police officer simply because you exist in a public place. Unless you are being arrested, or an officer is using a specific statutory power that requires it, you do not have to give your name, and you certainly do not have to hand over a digital ID or unlock your phone to show a license. Walking down a street is not a power that compels you to prove who you are. The second is about the cameras themselves, and I want to correct something you have probably heard, because the myth is more frightening than the truth. You may have seen the story of a man who was supposedly fined for covering his face from a facial recognition camera. That is not, in fact, what happened. He was given a penalty notice for disorder under Section 5 of the Public Order Act for the scene he caused afterwards, the argument and the behaviour, not for covering his face. The Metropolitan Police themselves confirmed that people who simply decline to show their faces in an area where the technology is operating will not be fined for that alone. So understand the actual position, because it's genuinely useful. You are allowed to not want your face scanned. You can pull a hood up, you can wear a hat, you can cross the road, you can take a different street entirely. Avoiding a camera is not by itself an offence, and it is not by itself grounds to arrest you. What you must not do is turn it into a confrontation, because the moment you start shouting, obstructing, causing a scene, you have handed them a genuine public order offence that has nothing to do with the camera. The power is in the quiet no, not the loud one. And I want to be honest about the limits of that, because I'm not going to sell you a fantasy of invincibility. In a fixed zone, right up next to a van, the police have got quite good at making it difficult to avoid. The whole point of the deployment is that you're funneled past it before you know it's there. So this isn't about dramatic evasion, hoods and dark glasses like something out of a film. It's about knowing, calmly and for certain, that you are within your rights to not participate, that stepping away is lawful, and that you owe no one an explanation for taking a different route home. That quiet certainty is worth more than any gadget, because it means that if an officer does approach you and suggests that avoiding the camera was itself suspicious, you know, and you can say, that it wasn't, and that you're not obliged to justify where you choose to walk. Here's the third right, and it's the subtle one. If a facial recognition system flags you as a match and an officer approaches you, that is the point where a general power to be nosy becomes a specific encounter, and you should treat it exactly as you'd treat any street stop. You can ask, calmly, what power they are using and why they've stopped you. You do not have to answer their questions, but understand the one hard edge here. If, separately from the camera, they form their own genuine grounds to search you, under stop and search powers, then you do have to submit to the search itself, even while you stay silent. Knowing the difference between the questions you can decline and the search you can't is the difference between handling it well and handling it badly. And the fourth is about your data after the fact. If you're stopped because a system matched your face and it turns out the match was wrong, and wrongful matches have happened to entirely innocent people, you have data protection rights. You can ask what was recorded, you can complain, and where a force has got it badly wrong, that is exactly the sort of thing that gets challenged and compensated. The technology being lawful in general does not mean every single use of it against you is lawful in particular. Make a note, that day, of where it happened, the time, and the number of any officer you spoke to, because with this, as with everything, a record made on the day is worth 10 times a memory 6 months later. And I'd be doing you a disservice if I pretended this was the end of the road rather than the beginning of it, because the direction of travel is the real story. Facial recognition is not staying in vans on the high street. The same technology is being fitted to officers' phones, so a face can be checked on the spot. It's being talked about on drones. And once your face is the key to your license, your bank app, your login to government services, the distance between a camera that spots wanted people and a single thread that ties together everywhere you go and everything you do becomes very short indeed. I'm not telling you that to frighten you. I'm telling you because the time to understand a system is while it's still being built, while the rules are still being written, while your objection still counts for something. Once it's finished and normal, nobody asks you anymore. They just scan. Now let me be fair one more time, because credibility is the whole game, and I'm not interested in frightening you for its own sake. This technology does catch genuinely dangerous people. Nobody sensible wants a wanted violent offender to walk through a crowd unnoticed. The argument was never that the police should be blind. The argument, the one the courts wrestled with, the one Parliament left half-finished, is about the millions of completely innocent people whose faces are captured to find the few, and about who decides the rules, and about whether you were ever asked. You can be entirely in favour of catching criminals and still believe that a database of the innocent, searched by face, with the main legal break removed in the same year, is something every citizen should at least know is happening. Knowing is not paranoia. Knowing is the price of not being caught out. So let me bring it together, because I want you to leave with something you can actually do, not just something to worry about. 3 things changed this year. Your license went onto your phone, unlocked by your face. The photo database of nearly every driver in the country was left open to police facial recognition rather than firmly closed off. And the cameras that scan your face in the street went from rare trial to national rollout in the very same year that the court case which used to stand in the way was replaced with a ruling that it's all lawful now, and here's what to do about it. And none of it requires you to become an activist. Keep your physical driving license, do not give it up for the app, because the card asks nothing of your face. Know that in a public place you do not have to identify yourself unless you're arrested or a specific power applies. Know that declining to be scanned, a hood, a hat, another street, is not an offence, as long as you stay calm and don't turn it into a scene. And know that if a camera flags you wrongly, you are not powerless. You can stay silent, you can ask what power they're using, and you have data rights afterwards. And do one more thing, and this is the one that actually shifts anything. When the consultation comes round, and the government is, right now, still writing the legal framework that decides how far all of this goes, that is the window in which an ordinary person's view still counts, before the rules harden into normal. You do not have to write an essay. A single line to your Member of Parliament saying you do not consent to your driving licence photo being turned into a police search tool is a thing that gets counted. The people building this are relying on the fact that it arrived too quietly for anyone to object. Objecting, calmly and on the record, is the whole point. Silence is taken as a yes. There's one more habit worth building, and it costs you nothing. Simply notice. When you see one of the vans, clock it, where it is, what it says on the side, whether there's any signage telling passers-by they're being scanned. You're allowed to look. You're allowed to photograph a police vehicle in a public place. And a population that notices is a very different thing to police from a population that walks past with its head down, because the entire power of this technology depends on you not paying attention to it. If this was useful to you, do 2 things for me. Share it with somebody, because most people in this country have genuinely no idea that any of this happened this year, and it happened to all of us at once. And subscribe, because I take exactly this kind of thing apart every week in plain English, so that when the state changes the rules quietly, you're one of the people who noticed. I'm Oliver Bennett. Keep your card, keep your calm, and I'll see you in the next one.